everybody, it's Sophie and Marco. We're trying to wrap up this Halloween Scary Month while being in December. So today we have The Hitcher. This is the next movie we are reviewing. It premiered in 1986 and it starred a 20-year-old C. Thomas Howell as Jim Halsey, Rutger Hauer as John Ryder, and Jennifer Jason Leigh as Nash. Jim Halsey is a young man who wants to move to California from Chicago. In order to do this, he participates in what is called a drive-away program, which means dropping off a vehicle to a person at a specific location. And in this case, it's going to be California.
I didn't know that existed.
I've never heard of it either. So, I don't know if they still have this kind of thing or not. But, anyway, it is handy if you move somewhere and you need your car taken there and you take a plane. So, if you need somebody to take the car to you. But I don't know if this is like that or this is a brand new car or what. That never was brought out. They just call it a drive-away program. So, anyway, the movie begins with Jim on the road out west somewhere, falling asleep, almost running into a semi. Then it starts raining, and he sees a hitchhiker, John Ryder, and decides to pick him up. This is where the, quote, fun begins, and never ends until the very last minute of the movie. After he picks up John Ryder, a car slowly swerves off the road in front of them. Jim almost crashes into it, but manages to avoid the crash. He wonders aloud as to what or why that person swerved off the road so quickly. Or it wasn't quickly, but just swerved off the road in a weird way. And the hitcher replies, I believe it's because when he picked me up, I cut off his arms and legs and even his head. Then he produces a knife, a medium-sized shiny blade, and shoves it into Jim's face and talks about what happens when someone's eye gets skewered by a knife. Jim is so frightened he abruptly shoves the hitcher out the door and onto the road and speeds out of there. He returns by way of just driving along the road, and I don't know why, and sees a family driving along with a kid in the back seat. And guess who's in the back seat with kid? The hitcher. Jim turns around and tries driving next to them, trying to warn them, honking and waving, pointing at the hitchhiker. And then finally, when he gets to them, they're all dead. Throughout the movie, the hitcher either ends up waiting for Jim at the next location, or after Jim stops somewhere, he shows up a little later. It's like that new version of the movie It, where Pennywise shows up everywhere the kids go, even the bathroom, and they just aren't safe anywhere. Well, in this movie, John Ryder, the hitcher, shows up everywhere Jim goes. Even when he isn't physically in the room and leaves, the hitcher impacts the scene somehow. For example, after seeing that family, Jim he's got to call the police. He's got to do something. So he stops at a diner, and it isn't really open yet, but the waitress shows up. Her name is Nash, and she allows him to come in after he says he's got to call the police, something's wrong. Before he goes to the bathroom to clean up, he calls the police, and then he goes in there, and while he does that, Nash decides to prepare him a cheeseburger and fries.
And by the way, those fries look burnt. I mean, they looked overcooked, like they were fried too long.
I don't know, I thought it looked good. But anyway, it's the only thing I know how to make, she explains. The cook isn't here yet. While Jim starts eating his fries, he realizes he's about to munch down on a human finger and runs outside to barf up his food.
It was originally supposed to be an eyeball.
Oh.
And now here's the thing. The eyeball would have represented him watching him. Like he always has his eye on him. And also the fact that he talked about what happens when you stab an eyeball.
That's right.
And so that would have been very cool. And then the finger thing, in my opinion, I think it means that he's gonna make people point fingers at him.
Oh, could be. Well, while he's outside barfing and almost hysterical, the police show up and arrest him for all those murders. That driveway company is closed. That drive-away company is closed, so they can't verify his status with them, and also his brother is not home. So he has to spend the night in jail. They don't really think he did it, at least some of them don't.
Well, they say that when he leaves the room, too.
Yeah, they don't say it to him.
He didn't know that, so he still thought they were thinking he was a criminal.
And I'm not sure why they want him, they're just, I don't know,
intimidating him.
being jerks, but anyway.
Well, they're police, that's what they do.
In the morning, he wakes up and hears the phone ringing over and over again. And he discovers that his cell door is unlocked. Unfortunately, finds everyone dead, and then he grabs a gun and escapes. Obviously, guess who's been there? Killed everyone and let him take the rap for it. Jim, that is.
Jim?
Now Jim is a wanted man.
Okay.
For the rest of the movie, it's like this until the end. Marco, go ahead.
I knew he was going to be framed because in the scene where he discovers the family, they show a close-up of his foot, and this blood drips down on his foot. And so I thought, oh, look, he's going to get framed and he's going to become the wanted person. And I thought, actually, that he would go to prison and then he would learn about all the crimes that he committed and like his background somehow, like through that type of thing. I didn't know that it was going to be like an action movie, because that's what it turned into, in my opinion. It was like an action movie. It was like Rambo. And that was my least favorite part of the movie, the fact that the first 15 minutes was like a horror movie, and then the rest of it is like action and drama. And they even don't show violence. And that's a big no-no, especially in horror movies. And the worst thing that they do is that the biggest kill of the movie, the most important kill, in Nightmare on Elm Street it would be the first kill, and Halloween it would be the first kill. Well, in this one, the most important character gets killed, and they don't even show it. And so this movie was not successful. In fact, it lost money. It lost over $200,000. It didn't even make any money at the theater. And then they remade it, and they added all the violence in, including the scene where this important character gets killed. And the movie was extremely successful to the point of making over double what the original made.
Well, that's a shame, because I think they had a good cast.
Yeah, the cast is the best part of the movie. Everybody was perfectly casted. The problem is the script, kind of, because there's definitely problems, like how it's like an action movie. And another problem is the studio, because the studio were the people who wouldn't let them show it. And the filmmakers of the movie even knew they were doing something wrong. Because that's not what you do in a horror movie. A real horror movie, that is. Not that PG-13 crap. So what do you have to say, Sophie? Because I know last time we talked about his background, or lack thereof, why he's doing it.
Well, that was the thing. The bad guy, the Hitcher, who we who is called Jim Ryder,
John Ryder.
John Ryder, sorry. The name is only brought up 2 times in the movie, and that's it. There's nothing else. There's no background on this person, and obviously, he doesn't live there. He's a hitcher. He's come in there, and we don't think he's supernatural like
At all.
Pennywise, like some kind of mythical being who's been there for hundreds of years, killing people on the road as they drove by, and first their horse and now the car. And I just don't. We just don't think that. We think that he's some kind of rogue intelligence agent or something like that, where he has the ability. The kills he does are very clean, and clean in terms of he's in there and out of there in 2 seconds. He doesn't leave any evidence of himself. Nobody knows who he is. They don't have any. It doesn't seem like they have any record. Like there's no fingerprints. There's nothing, because even if they arrested this Jim, it's only circumstances. They don't match. There's nothing physical like fingerprints or anything to match. He's always, like I said, he's either already there when Jim arrives, or he shows up soon thereafter. And why? Because he's really good at reconnaissance. And
he made up the name too, because at the beginning you see he hesitates for a minute. And now John is a name that a lot of killers use to hide their identity. They use something that starts with J. It's really common like that. And so you have John, and then you have Ryder. Well, he's a rider in the car. So that's how he came up with that name, in my opinion. Or maybe that's how the writer came up with it. And, so...
Another point of contention with this character, this bad guy, is that he is such a good killer. I mean, he kills everybody in sight. Everybody. But he doesn't kill Jim. Why? We think that, well, Marco actually thought this first, and I agree with him. When he first picked him up, Jim first picked John Ryder up, the guy, said, I just cut off this person's appendages. I cut his head off, and they stuck his knife in his face. But then Jim was able to push him out of the car, and it's like nobody has ever been able to do anything quick enough or smart enough to do something like that.
They're too afraid. They're too trusting in him. It's just like the thing with near the end.
And so he's had a million opportunities to kill Jim, because, like I said, he's been there at every place he's been. So, and even when he was staying in that police station, he was locked up in a cell. He woke up the next morning, everybody was dead, and his cell was open. So why is that? Why is the bad guy not killing Jim? We think it's because it's like he wants to commit suicide, and that may not totally be it, but he wants Jim to kill him. Instead of he killing himself, he wants Jim to kill him. And I don't know if it's like a test.
I thought that at the beginning of the movie, I thought that the two would be together, like half of the film, and then the second half would be, he finds out he's a killer, and then they play a cat and mouse game. But they only spend like 15 minutes with each other, so that was a big disappointing thing, because Rutger Hauer's hardly in the movie. He's in the beginning and in the third act somewhat. and other than that, it's just random police officers
getting killed
and
or threatening Jim.
yeah, and uh, what else was I gonna say? And I mean, he's so skilled. That's another problem, is that he spends this whole movie like killing police officers. He doesn't really like kill any people. Like,
Except for the family
except for the
and the
people
other
at the beginning and the
person in the
people at the
car.
end. But other than that, it's just like Rambo. And I really wish it would have been more of a serial killer movie, because he played the part really good, and I was really looking forward to it. After those first 15 minutes, I was like, wow. I was really shocked. And I didn't get that, and also I didn't know his background, which I don't like.
And they never say a word about it.
At
Nothing.
least, here's a fix. You could have had somebody who knows him, and he's coming into town because he knows he's there doing this, and he wants to either stop him or inform the police about him. And so then, Rutger Hauer, obviously, he's always one step ahead, so he finds this guy and kills him in his car. Or nearly kills him. He thinks he kills him. And then Jim finds him, and he's dying, and he gives Jim a couple of hints about his backstory. Uh, he had he had a wife, and she was terrible to him. He lost his job, and he killed a lot of people before. Even when I knew him, he wasn't a serial killer. He killed a lot of people overseas. I mean, simple things like that. And we didn't get that. We just got, he's this mysterious figure, like he's some supernatural or random guy. And the thing that I did like was trying to figure out why he's doing it. And I love, my favorite scene in the movie is the diner scene, where he asks him, why are you doing this? And he's like, you're a smart kid, you'll figure it out. I thought that was really cool and different. But other than that, I wanted to know about him, and I wanted more of him. Because honestly, the main character, he doesn't really have a lot of a character. He's just a kid who's caught up in trouble.
Yeah, the kid Jim doesn't do anything wrong. He's not doing anything wrong at all. He's being framed because the guy's so good. And they don't believe that he even exists. He says, "Oh, there's this guy, and he's a hitchhiker, and I picked him up, and he's killing everybody on the road, and killed his family, and blah blah blah." Well, nobody believes that there's such a person exists. They haven't seen the evidence of him, so Jim is automatically framed for it. And I guess we're talking about the spoiler alert, how it's discovered that otherwise. But anyway, I like the movie because I don't need to see a lot of violence. It's not something I enjoy, but I can see that it might make a difference. Like, I'm thinking about the first Scream movie when
Scream was extremely violent.
Yeah, I know,
and amazing.
When what's her name? Drew Barrymore is looking
gutted.
out the window and sees
She's
her.
gutted.
And
And
her
boyfriend is
out
dead.
there getting gutted, and so it's I don't need to see that. And it
You
didn't,
don't? But you like Scream better than this movie, right?
I don't know. I haven't.
So
seen,
you like this movie more than Scream?
I don't know. Maybe I just like them the
okay.
same. I have no idea. I haven't seen Scream in a long time.
Okay, what
I
about
saw it years ago.
what about Jeepers Creepers? You watched that a year ago. Do you like Jeepers Creepers more than this?
No.
What? You don't like Jeepers Creepers more than this? Oh,
Maybe.
just because of the characters.
Maybe.
They
I
made
don't
the
know. I
stupid
just think that the
choices.
characters in this movie are really, I think it's just a few characters, really, main characters.
It's very simple, and that's good.
That's right, and they're very well cast. Really. I thought they played their parts perfectly, and what Marco said about Rutger Hauer, I agree with that. He was really hardly in the movie.
He was the star of the show, and he wasn't even there.
And well, it ended up the guy who plays Jim, which he's a kid. he's really a young man. I mean, we just met him last year, and he's like in his, I
Yeah.
don't know, late 40s or early
50s.
50s. And I didn't realize, well, I hadn't seen this movie, but he was in E.T. as a kid. He was in The Outsiders playing, what is it, Pony?
It's Pony Boy.
Pony Boy. And
if you wonder why I remember that, it's because I had a teacher with an Outsiders fetish.
And Marco had to watch the movie about 10 times.
No, we watched it once, but she kept talking about it. Like, you guys ready to watch the movie? I made this trivia game about the Outsiders. I made these tests about the Outsiders. You guys, this is the greatest book of all time. You guys are going to love this.
And this guy, he's been in a lot of shows. He was in Grimm, which is just went off the air a few years ago. He was a rogue FBI agent. He was a member of the Barat, and he was a Hoonschlager or something like that. I can't remember, but anyway, but he was on the screen more than anybody else. So
he didn't have much of a character. He was just always in trouble.
He's always in trouble,
and
he was being framed for these murders, which he didn't do.
He knew he had a brother who
Yeah.
wasn't available for some reason. Movie coincidences. And he wants to move to California, which is not something that's uncommon, so that's not helpful. And it's just...
Yeah, there's not much about him either. Any of them, really. Any of the characters. But they just really... They
Jennifer Jason Leigh had more of a character than him.
Probably, yeah. Well,
she knew all the people from town. She's making the decision in front of her father, and her father's there on the phone. She helps him. All this stuff, it makes her have a character compared to him. But I was trying to make a point. Okay, do you like Halloween more than this? First Halloween?
I don't know, Marco.
Come on, make a decision.
Probably yes.
What horror movies do you like more than this?
I don't know.
The Shining?
Yeah, I like The Shining a lot.
Well, The Shining is... Excuse me. The Shining is 1,000 times more violent than this.
Yeah.
And so you're saying you don't want to see the violence, but The Shining has more violence and you like it more.
Okay, well the point for me personally is when I see violence, I usually just close my eyes or look away. So you can have all the violence in the world, but it has to be well placed too, like a good horror movie. It's just all gratuitous. I don't like it, and I'm not gonna say I
They
did.
didn't show anything in this
No,
movie.
they did not show
They cut
any
away.
violence. They cut away, and
like a PG-13
or
movie.
they showed it was the aftermath of the violence, like a person with blood all over them, slumped over. That's what they showed.
Of
the
course,
aftermath.
I've heard that that's a tip, that's something that writers that directors do. That they cut away from characters that are innocent. Like they don't show characters that are good characters that die, but then when it's like an evil character, they show like them fully dying, which is disgusting in my opinion, because they're basically saying it's good to kill anybody, and you want to see that person all that gore, but you don't want to see that with anybody else. That's just dumb. And in this movie, again, it's not a bad movie, but everybody, in fact, all the people watching it on YouTube, they all said it was underrated. And I disagree. I think it's a little overrated because it really messed up its potential. And that's why it lost money.
Okay, well, why don't we rate it now?
What's your rating, Safi?
Well, my rating is, because this movie, no matter what we think about the depth of the characters, or what would you say, depth of the characterization, or the lack of violence that is shown, not the aftermath or before it happens.
The lack of interaction between the main two characters.
Um, or we have no idea of the backstory, especially this bad guy. I mean, we are just making this up. We're surmising because of the way he is. The Hitcher's ability, like I said, to just show up and at any certain place where Jim is, and we see him at one time in the movie. We do see him watching from afar, Jim and the police arresting him, and so we do see him watching. So so he's really good at recon. So we made up this thing where, well, he must be like, who knows, a rogue special agent, or he's a hitman. I don't know, but he's really good at what he does. But anyway, despite all this, I liked the movie because I could not figure out what was going to happen until the end. I didn't know, and at least on half of the things I see, or 3/4, I'm pretty good at figuring out what's going on. And this thing, I'm like, it wasn't until the very end I knew what was going to happen. I mean, well, I can't say because that would be a spoiler. But anyway, I didn't know what was going to happen until the end. And so that's, to me, for me, that as a personal choice, that's a good thing. So I gave it a really good grilled cheese sandwich with a nice bowl of hot tomato soup. Okay, Marco, what about you?
I give this movie soggy, unseasoned fish, fried fish, and perfect fries. So fish and chips were the main thing, the main stuff that's very important about the movie. Characters, the story, that stuff was not nailed. And then the fries is some good moments, and the fact that the actors, because let's just face it, you would rather have better fish and not as good fries than have shitty fish and good fries. So that's what I rate this movie. I might watch it again, but it's not as likely because it had more potential than it was than what was realized. And no, I'm not gonna watch the remake because I think that the remake was pointless to do with the different actors. So anyway, spoiler alert.
Well, the spoiler alert is, remember we just talked about, we think that the Hitcher wants Jim to kill him. Why? Because he wants to leave this earth because he's tired of living the way he's living, or it's a test and maybe he thinks Jim won't really do it.
No.
I don't know, but it seems like he wants him to help him commit suicide by killing him.
It's
and he does.
He can't stop it. And in fact, that's something I didn't talk about in a non-spoiler. He can't stop killing. He makes constant excuses for how to keep continuing. Like with Jennifer Jason Leigh, he didn't have to kill her. He could have had him come in the truck, get his attention somehow, and not kill her, but he did because he's a killer and he doesn't want to stop. And yet he does want to stop. At the same time, he wants to be killed himself
in order to stop.
It's almost like the most dangerous game, I believe it's called. It's almost like that, where he thinks that he's so perfect or something that he doesn't think that anybody can accomplish that. But at the same time, it was also unnecessary to have these police go after him, because that really didn't do anything. Maybe it was good towards the end when the police were after him, but overall, too much of that stuff.
And it didn't. It just made things worse.
it made things more complicated,
Yeah,
which,
but I think that's kind of realistic, as we see that in real life.
well, I was expecting for it to be a lot simpler. Uh, just them two riding around, and then him catching up to him and murdering people. I didn't know that it was gonna be like Rambo.
Okay. Well,
But you wanted to talk about the scene.
which one?
The scene where they discover that he exists.
Well, what happens is uh, Jennifer Jason Leigh Nash. She she threatens these cops. They're about to take them away again, and she says, "I'll take them to this town, and I'll turn them in. We'll turn in together." And so they go, and then they stay overnight. I don't know if this is how, but they stayed overnight in a hotel. But what happened was when Jim was in the shower, guess who's there? And takes Jennifer Jason Leigh. And so, but before he showed up to take her away, she called her dad and told him, and Jim didn't know because he was taking a shower.
And he didn't want her to do that.
That's right. And she called him and she said, we're here. And I don't know what she was planning, but well, anyway, she told him about the hitchhiker. So she said, I saw him, because when they were together, they saw the hitchhiker. They were
That was a
actually,
very cool scene.
this was actually one of the best scenes in the movie. There's a parallel road to the one they were on, and she saw this guy. There was a helicopter, a police helicopter above them, trying to shoot at Jim and Nash, and the hitchhiker was over in that other car, and of course he shot the people in the helicopter down. Well, she saw all that. So is that the guy? Like, she never believed that there was one either. She had doubts. And so she knew that there was a hitchhiker. He was killing everybody. She just saw it happen. And so she told her dad. So what happened was they all her dad, and because he's a sheriff or something, and all these cops come, and so they now know there's this other guy, but unfortunately she's in this horrible position, chained between two trucks, and the hitchhiker's about to drive away and pull her apart.
That's another thing, is that this movie is called The Hitcher, and he only hitches 3 times in the whole movie. He hitches before the movie starts to kill that guy who's on the road. He hitches with the main guy, and then he and then he hitches with the family. And then after that, the whole rest of the movie, he has this gigantic pickup truck all of his own. This black pickup truck that's black because black is supposed to represent evil. And so that's another thing, is it would have been cool if he had to be challenged and hitched to get rides or something like that, instead of him just having this mega truck most of the movie. What do you think about that? Did you realize that?
No. But that makes sense because he's a larger than life killer. Because, in other words, not physically looking, but he's just so good at it. And black represents bad, and the bad evil, and so for him to drive that, that makes total sense.
If he's that good at it, he doesn't need that vehicle.
No, but it's just something
movie.
Because America's consumed with cars and trucks and vehicles.
Yeah, but he could have constantly been stealing other people's cars.
Well, how do we know that he didn't steal that one?
He did steal it, but we never saw it.
Him steal it? Well, we don't see him do a lot of things. He just shows up and he's everywhere. So, okay, well, I think if we don't have anything else to say, we should wrap it up, because the next movie we're going to do is
Dawn of the Dead Extended Edition.
and we have a few more after that, and then we're going to do Christmas movies. Hallmark Week, it's coming up. Plus, I have book reviews.
It's the most popular thing on the channel.
I know.
Which is
Because-
very strange.
No, the reason why, this is just one more thing. The reason why we do Hallmark Week is because there are so many Hallmark movies, and not a lot of them are really, really good. So I would look around and think, well, which one of these should I watch? And people don't have a lot of time to watch tons of stuff. So I thought it'd be nice to find other people, including myself and Marco, find a Hallmark movie that's really good that we could recommend to help other people decide what to watch too, to give them some good information. That's all.
You
Because
never didn't do a top 10 list.
no, I don't want to do that.
Because that'll be
Marco's really big on
essential.
top 10.
Well, people will be like, hey, this is top 10 Hallmark movies I should watch.
But I think it's impossible to do a top 10. Like, for example,
Okay.
this year, I think they made 17 new movies for Christmas. I mean, 17! Now, that's too many. So, I mean, that's why I said I think it's good for
And they're all
people.
the same.
Well, a lot of them repeat the same storyline. I mean, I can tell you because I know I've watched them. I say, oh yeah, I've seen that one. I've seen that story before. Only it was with these different people, and they have some of the same actors and actresses. They're like Alicia Witt is one person right now. I can say she's in a lot of Hallmark movies. And so anyway, that's enough of that. So we'll be back. Goodbye, everybody.
Bye, everybody.